Good day. I welcome everyone who joined us. I'm Olga Tamanova and the Media Center Ukraine Forum, which is going on with its work today. And now we will be speaking about the situation in the Black and Azov Seas. We'll be speaking about the enemy fleet state. We are online with Dmytro Pletenchuk, spokesman for the Ukrainian Navy. Dmytro, hello. Yes, hello studio, hello all of the presentees and the viewers. Dmytro, I would like to begin our conversation with such input data about the state of the enemy fleet and about how we know that recently many of the ships were hit by us. What is the current situation? How can we describe it to understand the whole picture? As you can see, in the Black Sea, in fact, the enemy has chosen the tactics to be presented as submarines. And here, instantly, I need to describe how many of them do they have within the Black Sea fleet. 7 submarines. 6 of them are the carriers of the cruise missiles. In these 6 submarines, 2 are beyond the Black and Azov Sea as of the beginning of the full-scale invasion, so they were not able to come back, and now they are located most probably in St. Petersburg at the factory which was constructed for the repairment and maintenance. 4 more submarines, which are the carriers, one of them was destroyed, that is Rostov-na-Donu. It was hit by the Air Force of Ukraine during the attack against Minsk, and this submarine was also hit. It is also under maintenance in the Crimea now. Out of the 3 carriers which are still functioning, one of them is not getting to the open sea. Most probably it is also at the repairment or maintenance, but this information is only an assumption. So we have 3 submarines which are getting to the open sea. 2 of them are carriers. One of them is now in the sea, that is the 636 project, the so-called Warsaw one. According to the classification of NATO, it is Kilo. So it is considered to be a very not that bad project, even a successful one. It has been created as the export version, and it was the continuation of the Paltus project, which is also the submarine Alorosa, which is in the Black Sea. So these 3 submarines, in fact, shift by shift, are on duty at the Black Sea. And this format of presence was chosen, I would say, by the new heads of the Navy of Russian Federation to be present somehow besides the aviation, because the main load is taken by the air component. More than a dozen of aircrafts a day are in the airspace over the equatorium of the Black Sea, and more than 10 flights a day per day. The aviation is present in different formats. Those are bombers and fighters and patrol aircrafts and helicopters of different models. The military say that it's the whole zoo. So we have the whole model line from Su-24 to even 57, which was visiting us as well, and the intelligence drones of different models, of different producers. There are more of 5 of them, which are also patrolling the water area, and they're getting to the south of Ukraine. Every day they are being hit. Mostly those are Orlan 10, and also this could be the Mojahed 6 of Iranian production, and we also had other options of UAVs. So in this format, they are in the Black Sea. This presence is thanks to the submarine, which, by the way, recently even hit a cruise missile against the Mykolaiv region, but with no outcome. What's important, they have the strike group, which is at least 6 ships. 3 of them are the carriers of cruise missiles, and 3 are the large landing crafts. Knowing their behavior and the composition of their groups, this is the training process, because the academic year has started. in the armed forces of the so-called Russian Federation. And Azov Sea can be considered by Russians more secure and safe than the Black Sea, because maybe they think that they control the Kerch Strait. So they are in relative security from the Ukrainian UAVs. As the Azov Sea is not that deep, up to 15 meters, and the number of recommended routes is really limited, the Russians are in the same locations with the civil ships, which are numerous as well, and they're using it as a kind of a shield. So, because in fact, of course, it is the usual tactics for the Russians. As for the issue of logistics provision of the Crimea, which is the most relevant as of today, we can see that the tactical group is provided thanks to the work of the ferry, which is not civil at all. This is the ferry crossing, which covers more than 3/4 of military logistics to provide the Crimea, and the South Group, which is taking part in the combats in the south direction. The bridge does not have that much of logistics load, first of all because of the lots of damage which was inflicted by the operations of the security service of Ukraine and the military. So, Dmytro, do we understand correctly that the ferry crossing, which was damaged by us, by our strikes, was more or less restored, reconstructed, and it is functioning now? Yes, I can state the fact that it is working now. One more question. Recently, we had the information that the ships of the aggressor country, for the first time in 2024, they came to Mariupol. Is it true? And if yes, what does it witness about? As for the military units, I'm not sure. I cannot confirm this information. As for the civil ships, yes, surely they are constantly there. They have had the deepening works there, because considering that this is not a deep sea, and there can be a kind of during the storms they have sand and in fact silt there, so they had to clean it. The port of Mariupol is first and foremost used to take the robbed property, I mean the grain and the metals, whatever they can steal from the temporarily occupied territories of the south of Ukraine, Donetsk, Zaporizhia, partially Kherson regions, and in this way they are using rather actively Mariupol port and Berdyansk as well. Dmytro, we've already started the conversation about the logistic routes. It's interesting to get to know about your opinion how we can now impact their functioning of these logistic routes. First of all, we are speaking about the sea routes, and secondly, we all heard the information that the aggressor country is trying to combine, to in fact unite and to provide a connection with the Crimea through the railways. Do they succeed? As for this railway, this is the railway which is constructed to provide the military activity, to provide the troops, because the railway logistics is the cheapest and the quickest, in fact, so it's very traditional for the Russian army. So yes, they have launched this project. They're trying to connect Rostov-na-Don on Don with the Crimea through the, in fact, through the isthmus, and they have already created a part of it, but they did not reach Crimea, as far as I know. They announced that they would like to launch the functioning till the end of the year, but it's not that easy. Yes, the Russians know how to create or reconstruct railways. It's a fact. But still, we shouldn't forget that this logistics route is much closer to the combat area, so it is in the zone of hitting of lots of majority of weapon systems of Ukraine. So there are more questions here than answers. The enemy says that we cannot reach them, but how can it be used? With what consequences? We'll be able to see that only later. And the second question is about the sea routes. How can we influence their functioning as well? There are several points which are important here. First of all, Ukraine is complying with all the international rules, the Convention of the United Nations on the marine law. So we cannot act in contradiction with any international law. We provide the security of our civil shipping and the navy and other components of defense and security forces of Ukraine. And our objective is, first of all, to do that so as our corridor was working sustainably. More than 50 million tons of freight is already a very substantial indicator. And the main part and freight is steel grain. This is the biggest share of all of the shippings. And for Ukraine, we cannot overestimate the importance of export. Before the full-scale invasion, the sea component had 90% of export. So, as well as import, by the way. So we are focused first and foremost on the provision of this corridor. As for the sea communication routes which are used by Russian occupant, again, we need to separate several points. First of all is the civil shipping, the trade ships, and unfortunately they are still getting to the ports in Azov region through the Crimean Strait, which is in fact officially closed by Ukraine because these are the territorial waters of Ukraine. And we've created already the warning about the closing of the civil shipping at this part. But still they're coming from the Bosphorus as well to the ports at Azov part, official Russian ones. And secondly, this is more the question to the international law. That is the use of the sea logistics in the interests of the military. As you can see, the military marine logistics is not used by the Russians. The transportation by the, for instance, large landing crafts are not used because they understand the consequences. And we all saw that Cesar Kulikov let us know about that, as well as Novocherkassk, for instance. So yes, they are using the civil ferries so as, together with the civilians, using them as a shield, as they always do, to transport their targeted freights. Last time, these logistics tools were inflicted and were hit because they don't have the collateral considering the planning and the use. However, in fact, it is still the main tool for them, because as I already mentioned, the breach cannot provide that. And the aviation communication takes too much time and it's too expensive. By sea, you can also use the automobile or vehicles, but it is much more expensive and takes much longer because the train can take much more instantly than the trucks if you need to take ammunition or reserves or the stuff. We have the question among the journalists, please. Hello, Volodymyr, D1 TV channel. I have two questions. The first one is, how does the enemy use the river communications in their military operations? And the second question, what is now the enemy Dnipro navy now? What is happening with this enemy's project? Well, knowing how they love Greek mythology, which they don't have anything in common, in fact, you do remember how they named the Prometheus. So the Dnieper fleet can be named Charon, in fact, because it would be really clever if we do that. Because from time to time I can see the losses in the Dnieper, 3, 5, 2 boats per day, in fact. Those are smaller boats, of course, and definitely they have lots of them, because this fleet has been created out of the mixture, starting with the little boats and bigger ones, which they trivially are taking or grabbing from the local population in Kherson region. Because it's not a joke, every third person there is a fisherman, and so they had lots of cooperatives along the Dnieper River from both banks, and so lots of boats. So they use these boats, civil boats. They're also using usual vehicles of the Sea Infantry. 810 Brigade of the Crimea is working there, and they are also strengthening that with additional ones within the Dnieper watercrafts. But this is the open water, so this is the huge risk of mines and a huge number of FPV drones. At this direction, by the way, for instance, the Ukrainian armed forces have the substantial advantage on the use of FPV drones. And of course, the losses are very substantial among Russians as well. So just to say that they are somehow using the river fleet for that, and these watercrafts successfully, no, it wouldn't be true. So yes, in fact, for them, Dnieper is a Styx river. They can get to the other side, but in the majority of cases, this is the trip with a one-way ticket. Dmytro, thank you so much, and we have one more question in the audience, please. Victoria Shevchenko, Ukrinform. Do we now see the threat of the, in fact, Russian landing of the Russians at the south of Ukraine? The only place where they can provide amphibious landing at the occupied shore of the Azov Sea. This is the only location where they can provide the amphibious landing more or less without consequences. But without any jokes, the amphibious landing capacities of our enemy were decreased during the last 2 years. Before the beginning of the full-scale invasion, they brought 6 large landing crafts. So altogether, there are 13 of them, without considering our large landing craft Olshansk, which unfortunately is left in the Crimea, and as we found out, they reconstructed it. But they restored it. That's good, but what happened after that is a different story, because they cannot use it anymore. So the overall number is 14 units. 4 of them have been destroyed, 5 are being repaired, and 5 are functioning. So as you can see, in fact, it's 1/3 of what they were going to use during the amphibious landing process. So we have the decrease of their amphibious landing capacities. Secondly, coming closer to our shore is the quest, well, not with a zest, but it's just the kind of a really lethal case, because at least 100 marine miles is the biggest distance to our shore. And the bigger objectives like large landing crafts. Besides that, such operations are the most complicated marine operations, and they are not done as a separate operation only when they want to provide this kind of amphibious landing at the shore. It's, in fact, within the overall bigger military operation to support the land component. So if they succeeded on the land, what they considered they will achieve at the beginning of the full-scale invasion, when they went around Mykolaiv city from the north and they were stopped at Voznesensk, then it could make sense if they reached Odessa region, but they did not. And of course they will not anymore. So this operation, in fact, is senseless. So as of now, such operations shouldn't be expected. Dmytro, I thank you so much that you joined our air. I thank you for the information which you provided. Dear colleagues, let me remind, we had Dmytro Pletenchuk, spokesman for the Ukrainian Navy. And I thank you for your interest. Thank you for staying with us. And just now, our team is getting ready the schedule of events for tomorrow, so follow our announcements. We are working together for the sake of our victory. Glory to Ukraine.